For years, the world has been told that electric cars are the only future. Governments are banning gas engines, car companies are pouring billions into batteries, and consumers are being nudged, sometimes even pushed toward a battery-powered lifestyle. But what if everyone's been missing something massive? Enter Christian von Koenigsegg, the visionary founder of one of the most daring car brands on the planet. At a private, invite-only event that felt more like a sci-fi movie premiere than a car reveal, Koenigsegg dropped a bombshell. In front of a hand-picked group of industry insiders, he unveiled a new engine that could completely flip the script, not just for his company but for the entire automotive world. With his signature confidence and flair, Koenigsegg revealed what he called the Light Speed Engine, a piece of technology so bold that some experts are already whispering it could make today's electric vehicles look outdated. The moment wasn't just about unveiling an engine, it felt like he was rewriting the future of mobility right in front of everyone's eyes. The crowd, part stunned, part skeptical, leaned in, because this wasn't a minor update or an incremental tweak. It was a daring leap into uncharted territory, one that promised to keep the thrill of driving alive while tackling the biggest challenge of our time: how to move people around without wrecking the planet. But here's the thing, this reveal was just the beginning. What Koenigsegg had under the hood wasn't just impressive, it was disruptive. And the deeper you look, the more you realize why this announcement sent shockwaves through the automotive world. So what exactly makes this engine so different? On the surface, it looks like a traditional internal combustion engine, but the secrets are buried deep inside its design. Koenigsegg calls it the Light Speed Engine, and the name isn't just for show. This thing operates with a precision and efficiency that experts once thought impossible. Instead of relying on outdated fuel injection systems or bulky hybrid setups, Koenigsegg's creation uses a revolutionary combustion cycle that squeezes every drop of energy out of the fuel. The result? Power levels that rival today's top electric supercars, but without the massive weight of a battery pack. It's lean, it's fast, and it's shockingly efficient. Even more surprising is how it handles fuel. Unlike traditional gas engines, this one isn't locked to a single type. Koenigsegg designed it to run on multiple sustainable fuels, everything from advanced biofuels to synthetic blends that mimic gasoline but produce a fraction of the emissions. In other words, it's not just a throwback to old-school engines, it's a reinvention. But here, where things get even crazier. Thanks to Koenigsegg's patented camless technology. Yes, camless, this engine doesn't rely on the same mechanical limits that have restricted combustion engines for over a century. Instead, each valve is electronically controlled, opening and closing with perfect timing. That means power can be tuned instantly, efficiency can be maximized on the fly, and emissions can be slashed in ways regulators never thought possible. To put it simply, this isn't an engine that fights against the future. It's an engine built to thrive in it, and if Koenigsegg is right, it could prove that the era of combustion isn't dead, it's just evolving. But as groundbreaking as the engineering is, the bigger question is this: why now? Why would Koenigsegg choose this exact moment to challenge the electric revolution everyone else seems to be embracing? For years, Koenigsegg watched the EV wave build momentum. Governments throwing incentives, automakers racing to electrify, and headlines declaring the combustion engine dead. But behind the scenes, he saw cracks in the story. Because while electric cars sound like the perfect solution, the reality is far more complicated. The first issue? Batteries. They're heavy, expensive, and rely on rare minerals dug out of mines in politically unstable regions. Producing them leaves a bigger environmental scar than most people realize. And when they wear out, recycling them is still an unsolved challenge. Then there's the infrastructure problem. Sure, charging works in big cities with a web of stations, but what about rural areas or entire countries where the grid can barely handle daily demand? Koenigsegg saw a future where millions of EVs could actually strain power networks to the breaking point. And perhaps most importantly, there's the driving experience. For purists, the roar of an engine, the instant surge of mechanical power, the thrill of revs climbing, it's part of the soul of driving. Electric cars deliver speed, yes, but they often feel muted, sterile, and lifeless. Koenigsegg knew there was a gap, a space for innovation that kept the thrill alive while addressing sustainability. So instead of following the crowd, he asked a dangerous question: what if electric isn't the only answer? By unveiling his Light Speed Engine now, Koenigsegg isn't just launching a new car part, he's planting a flag in the middle of the EV revolution. A bold reminder that technology doesn't move in straight lines, and sometimes the most radical ideas come from refusing to follow the script everyone else is reading. But of course, Koenigsegg didn't stop there, because the deeper story isn't just about efficiency or performance. It's about a rivalry, one that pits his vision directly against the biggest players in the industry. The timing of Koenigsegg's announcement couldn't be more provocative, because right now the auto industry feels like a battlefield. On one side you have Tesla, Elon Musk's empire that turned EVs from a niche curiosity into a global obsession. On the other, legacy automakers like Toyota, Mercedes, and Ford, all scrambling to catch up before regulators shut the door on gas forever. By unveiling the Light Speed Engine, Koenigsegg sent a very clear message: he's not playing by their rules. While Tesla pours billions into battery factories and Toyota gambles on hydrogen, Koenigsegg is carving a third path, one that threatens to make both strategies look outdated. It's a bold play because Koenigsegg isn't just a car maker, he's a disruptor who thrives on proving the impossible. Remember, this is the man who built hypercars that shattered speed records and introduced camless engines when others said it couldn't be done. Now he's doing the same thing on a much bigger stage. And make no mistake, the big players are watching. Because if Koenigsegg is right, the massive investments into EV infrastructure could suddenly look like a risky bet. Imagine pouring hundreds of billions into battery plants and charging networks, only to realize a lightweight, flexible combustion engine powered by clean fuels can deliver the same benefits without the same limitations. Tesla may still dominate headlines. Toyota may still be pushing hybrids and hydrogen, and the Germans may still chase electrification, but Koenigsegg just reminded them all that innovation doesn't care about consensus. It only cares about results. And while rivals were busy plotting their strategies for the next decade, Koenigsegg quietly set the stage for a revolution that none of them saw coming. But here's the twist: this isn't just about cars. Because what Koenigsegg is really exposing is a much bigger debate. What if the entire world has been sold a one-way ticket to an EV future that might not actually work? On the surface, the electric dream looks unstoppable. Clean, silent cars, zero tailpipe emissions, and a future where the planet is saved one battery at a time. But peel back the glossy marketing and the cracks start to show. Let's start with the mines. Every EV battery depends on rare materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Mining them is not only destructive to the environment, but it often comes with a human cost: stories of unsafe labor conditions, entire landscapes scarred, and communities left in ruins. Yet these uncomfortable truths are rarely mentioned in the flashy car commercials. Then there's the grid problem. Right now, most countries are already struggling to keep up with electricity demand. Add millions of EVs charging at once and the system starts to bend, and in some places even break. Blackouts, surging energy prices, and overloaded networks could become a harsh reality long before everyone has made the switch. And here's something the industry doesn't like to admit: EVs aren't as green as they sound. Building a giant battery requires so much energy that some experts argue it takes years of driving before an electric car actually becomes cleaner than a modern hybrid or efficient combustion engine. And if that battery ends up in a landfill instead of a recycling plant, the environmental costs skyrocket. But the biggest problem of all might be control. EVs are software-driven, connected machines. That means more data tracking, more updates you don't control, and in some cases, limitations on how and where you can even repair your own car. For some drivers, that future feels less like freedom and more like a digital leash. This is exactly the blind spot Koenigsegg is targeting. Because while everyone else is rushing headfirst into batteries, he's saying, what if we can have sustainability without these compromises? And that question is what makes his light speed engine so dangerous to the EV status quo. Because if he's right, then the inevitable future of electric cars suddenly looks a lot less inevitable. But here's the real kicker: Koenigsegg isn't alone in this fight. Quietly, other companies and researchers are starting to hint at alternatives, and some of them are just as wild as his. Koenigsegg may have lit the spark, but he isn't the only one questioning the all-electric future. Quietly, some of the biggest names in the industry are exploring alternatives, ideas so bold they rarely make it into the mainstream headlines. Take Toyota, for example. While most car makers are betting everything on batteries, Toyota has been stubbornly exploring hydrogen. Their engineers argue that hydrogen engines could deliver the same zero-emission benefits without the weight, mining, or recycling nightmare of lithium batteries. It's a gamble, but one that shows not everyone believes EVs are the final answer. Then there's Porsche, investing heavily into synthetic fuels, liquids created in labs that can burn clean inside existing engines. If synthetic fuels scale up, suddenly the millions of combustion cars already on the road don't have to be scrapped. Instead, they can run on cleaner energy with minimal changes. Even outside the big automakers, small startups and labs are working on next-gen hybrids, biofuels, and ultra-efficient engines that challenge the one-size-fits-all narrative. And governments, especially in Europe and Asia, are quietly funding these projects, not because they hate EVs, but because they know putting all the world's transportation eggs in one basket is risky. Koenigsegg's Light Speed Engine fits perfectly into this underground wave of resistance. It's a reminder that progress isn't about following one straight path, it's about experimenting, testing, and refusing to accept inevitable futures that might not work. And here, where things get interesting. Because while the industry keeps telling us EVs are the only way, the fact that giants like Toyota and Porsche are hedging their bets suggests one thing: behind closed doors, they're not as confident as their marketing makes it seem. But the real question is, if alternatives like Koenigsegg's engine, hydrogen, or synthetic fuels actually work, what does that mean for the billions already invested in electric cars? Of course, going against the tide comes with a price, and Koenigsegg knows it. The moment he unveiled his light speed engine, critics were already circling. The first wave of backlash came from environmental groups. For years, they've been pushing the idea that combustion equals pollution, full stop. To them, even a cleaner, smarter engine is still a step backward. The fear is simple: if alternatives like this gain traction, they could slow down the EV revolution governments have been forcing forward. Then there's the political angle. Billions in subsidies, regulations, and tax breaks are already locked into EV production. If a breakthrough combustion technology proves itself, it would expose just how risky and maybe short-sighted those policies really are. That makes Koenigsegg a target, not just for critics in the industry, but for lawmakers who don't want to admit they might have bet on the wrong horse. And of course, there's the corporate pushback. Companies like Tesla, Volkswagen, and even Ford have sunk unimaginable sums into EV development. Entire business models, factories, and global supply chains are tied to batteries. Do you think they'll sit back quietly while a tiny Swedish disruptor threatens to rewrite the script? Not a chance. But maybe the most dangerous risk isn't external, it's internal. By going public with such a bold claim, Koenigsegg has set the bar sky high. If his engine doesn't live up to the hype, if it fails even once on the world stage, the same people cheering him today will turn on him tomorrow. And in an industry where perception often matters more than reality, that could be brutal. Still, if there's one thing history proves, it's that Koenigsegg thrives under pressure. Every time people said he couldn't do something, he did it anyway and usually left the skeptics scrambling to catch up. But that doesn't answer the ultimate question, the one everyone watching wants to know: could this really change the entire future of cars, or is it just a flashy distraction in a world already racing toward electric? So here we are, on one side. The world is charging full speed into an electric future. On the other, Christian von Koenigsegg is standing firm with an idea so radical it could reset the entire game. The light speed engine isn't just another experiment, it's a statement. A challenge to the industry, to governments, and to every driver who's been told there's only one way forward. It says, innovation doesn't die just because the crowd decides it should. Could it really change everything? That depends. If Koenigsegg's technology proves scalable, if sustainable fuels gain momentum, and if other companies dare to follow his lead, then yes, this could be the spark that stops the EV story from being written in stone. The combustion engine, once declared dead, could roar back in a form no one saw coming. But even if it doesn't topple the electric wave, Koenigsegg has already done something priceless. He's reminded the world that progress is never one-dimensional. That sometimes the boldest breakthroughs don't come from the giants but from the outsiders willing to defy the script. And maybe that's the real story here, not whether this single engine wins or loses, but whether it inspires others to start asking the dangerous questions the industry doesn't want asked. Because in the end, the future of mobility isn't about choosing between electric, hydrogen, or combustion. It's about refusing to settle for easy answers. And if Christian von Koenigsegg has his way, the next decade of driving won't be defined by silence, it'll be defined by the roar of innovation itself.